On June 6, 1944, the world witnessed one of the most pivotal moments in modern history. D-Day, the launch of Operation Overlord. This massive operation was the Allied effort to liberate Western Europe from the grip of Nazi Germany, a mission that required extensive planning, coordination, and most of all, extraordinary bravery. The stakes of this operation could not have been higher. For years, Hitler's forces had held Western Europe under brutal occupation, and the success of the Allied invasion was essential to break the Nazi stronghold and turn the tide of World War II. Omaha Beach, one of the 5 designated landing zones on the Normandy coast, became a name etched in history for the sheer ferocity of the battle and the unimaginable courage displayed by American soldiers who fought there. The decision to launch the invasion of Normandy was not made lightly. By 1944, the Allied powers, including the United States, Britain, and Canada, knew that a successful invasion of France was critical to defeating Nazi Germany. For months, meticulous planning went into Operation Overlord, the code name for the Allied assault. The beaches of Normandy were chosen because of their relative proximity to Britain and the ability to surprise the German defenses. The Allies employed various deceptive tactics, such as Operation Bodyguard, to convince German forces that the invasion would occur at Pas-de-Calais, a more heavily defended area to the northeast. Despite these efforts, the Germans were well aware that an invasion was imminent and fortified their coastal defenses, known as the Atlantic Wall, which stretched from Scandinavia to Spain. Omaha Beach was assigned to American forces, primarily the 1st Infantry Division, known as the Big Red One, and the 29th Infantry Division, a unit made up of both seasoned soldiers and fresh recruits. These men, along with specialized combat engineers, naval support crews, and paratroopers, were tasked with one of the most difficult objectives of the entire operation. The terrain at Omaha Beach posed a significant challenge. The long, flat shore was backed by steep bluffs that offered German defenders a commanding view of the battlefield. In addition to natural obstacles, the Germans had fortified the beach with concrete bunkers, machine gun nests, artillery, mines, wooden stakes, and barbed wire. The Allies knew that any assault on Omaha would be costly, but the mission's success was vital for securing a foothold in France and advancing further inland. As dawn broke on June 6th, thousands of American troops approached the shore in Higgins boats, small landing craft designed to transport soldiers from the larger naval ships to the beach. The seas were rough that morning, making the approach even more treacherous. Many men were seasick, cold, and exhausted even before they stepped onto the sand. The German defenses were prepared and waiting. As soon as the first landing craft neared the shore, the Germans opened fire with devastating intensity. Machine gun bullets rained down on the approaching soldiers, cutting through men and boats alike. Artillery shells exploded in the water, sinking craft and scattering survivors. Those who managed to make it to the shore found themselves in a nightmare. The beach was littered with obstacles that made progress nearly impossible. Wooden stakes and steel hedgehogs, designed to rip apart landing craft, were partially submerged, forcing the soldiers to wade through open water under constant fire. Mines exploded with deadly force, claiming the lives of men who were only moments away from reaching the sand. The soldiers' equipment weighed them down, and many drowned under the burden of their gear as waves crashed over them. For those who did make it onto the beach, there was little cover. The flat, open sand provided no protection from the withering fire coming from the German positions on the bluffs. Amid the chaos and carnage, American soldiers displayed remarkable bravery. Officers and enlisted men alike rallied together, finding ways to push forward despite the overwhelming odds. Small groups of soldiers crawled through the sand, using shell holes and the bodies of fallen comrades as makeshift cover. Combat engineers braved the enemy fire to clear paths through the mines and barbed wire, allowing others to move forward. Leadership played a critical role on Omaha Beach. Figures like Brigadier General Norman Cota inspired their men to keep moving despite the dire circumstances. Cota famously urged his troops forward, shouting, "Gentlemen, we are being killed on the beaches. Let us go inland and be killed." The price of every inch of progress was paid in blood. Units became disorganized as leaders were killed or wounded, and chaos reigned. Soldiers who had trained for months found their plans unraveling the moment they stepped off the landing craft. Yet, despite the confusion and the terrifying conditions, many men showed incredible resourcefulness and determination. They improvised new plans, found gaps in the German defenses, and slowly began to push up the bluffs. The courage of individual soldiers turned the tide. Men like Private First Class Leonard Kozelek, who single-handedly took out a German machine gun nest, exemplified the heroism that defined Omaha Beach. Naval gunfire from Allied ships played a crucial role in suppressing German defenses. Although rough seas initially prevented effective bombardment, the support of destroyers and cruisers eventually helped weaken the German positions. Pilots from the Allied air forces also contributed, though limited visibility made precision strikes difficult. The combined efforts of soldiers, sailors, and airmen allowed the Americans to gain a tenuous hold on the beach by midday. The German defenders, initially confident in their ability to repel the invasion, began to falter as their positions were overwhelmed and their ammunition ran low. By the end of June 6th, Omaha Beach was secured, but at a staggering cost. Over 2,400 Americans were killed, wounded, or missing in action on that single day. The beach, once a scene of death and destruction, was now a testament to the courage and sacrifice of those who fought there. For the men who survived, the memories of Omaha Beach would remain etched in their minds forever. They had faced unimaginable terror and adversity, yet their determination and bravery carried the day. The success of the D-Day invasion marked a turning point in World War II. By securing the beaches of Normandy, the Allies established a critical foothold in Europe, which allowed them to push inland and begin the liberation of France. The men who fought on Omaha Beach played a vital role in this victory, and their actions had a lasting impact on the course of history. Their sacrifice paved the way for the eventual defeat of Nazi Germany and the restoration of freedom to millions of people. Today, Omaha Beach stands as a solemn reminder of the bravery and sacrifices made on D-Day. Memorials and cemeteries honor the soldiers who gave their lives, ensuring that their courage is never forgotten. The story of Omaha Beach is not just one of war, but of human resilience, determination, and the unbreakable spirit of those who fought for freedom. The men who stormed Omaha Beach on June 6, 1944, faced impossible odds, yet their heroism helped change the world. Their legacy lives on, inspiring future generations to remember the sacrifices made in the pursuit of peace and liberty. The men who led the charge on Omaha Beach during the D-Day invasion on June 6, 1944, were a unique mix of courage, determination, and resilience. They were soldiers, officers, engineers, medics, and young men far from home, tasked with a seemingly insurmountable mission: to break through heavily fortified German defenses and secure a vital beachhead on the coast of Normandy. The soldiers of the 1st Infantry Division, known as the Big Red One, and the 29th Infantry Division, often referred to as the Blue and Gray, spearheaded the assault. They were joined by combat engineers, naval personnel, and support units, each with a critical role to play. The men who charged forward that day demonstrated a level of heroism that defied the chaos and carnage around them. Many of these soldiers were just young men, teenagers or in their early 20s, freshly trained and thrust into the most dangerous of situations. Others were veterans of previous battles, hardened by experiences in North Africa and Sicily. Despite their differences, they were bound by a shared commitment to the mission. In the pre-dawn hours of June 6th, these soldiers sat nervously in their Higgins boats, the small landing craft that would carry them from Allied ships to the shore. The air was cold, the seas rough, and many soldiers were seasick long before the boats even approached the beach. The sound of artillery fire echoed in the distance, a forewarning of the hell awaiting them. As the first wave of landing craft approached Omaha Beach, German defenders opened fire with merciless precision. From their fortified positions on the high bluffs overlooking the shore, they unleashed a barrage of machine gun fire, artillery shells, and mortar rounds. The soldiers in the landing craft faced a nightmare before they even reached the sand. Some boats were hit directly by German fire, sinking before they could unload their men. Soldiers weighted down by heavy gear and equipment drowned in the cold, choppy water. For those who made it off the boats, the fight for survival had only just begun. On the beach, the scene was one of chaos and carnage. The open shoreline offered no real cover, leaving soldiers completely exposed to enemy fire. Machine gun bullets ripped through the air, and mortar shells exploded with deadly force. The men who led the charge had to find the strength to push forward despite seeing their friends and comrades falling around them. Yet, amid the chaos, stories of extraordinary heroism emerged. Officers and soldiers alike refused to surrender to the overwhelming odds, rallying their men and inspiring those around them to keep moving. Brigadier General Norman Cota, a senior officer in the 29th Infantry Division, became one of the most notable leaders on Omaha Beach. Seeing his men pinned down by German fire, Coda moved among them, offering words of encouragement and leading by example. At one point, he famously shouted, "Gentlemen, we are being killed on the beaches. Let us go inland and be killed." His words cut through the fear and desperation, galvanizing his men to push forward. Coda personally led small groups of soldiers in clearing German positions, demonstrating that leadership on the battlefield often comes down to courage in the face of death. Another hero of Omaha Beach was Lieutenant Colonel George Taylor of the 16th Infantry Regiment, part of the 1st Infantry Division. As his men hesitated under heavy fire, Taylor made his way to the front lines and declared, "There are two kinds of people who are staying on this beach. Those who are dead and those who are going to die. Now let's get the hell out of here." His unflinching resolve motivated his troops to find their courage and advance up the beach. Leaders like Taylor understood that hesitation could mean the difference between victory and defeat, and their bravery inspired the men around them to overcome their fear and press forward. In addition to officers, ordinary soldiers became heroes through their actions on Omaha Beach. Private First Class Leonard Kozelek, for example, single-handedly took out a German machine gun nest that was devastating American troops. Crawling through the sand under heavy fire, Kozelek managed to throw grenades into the position, silencing the guns and saving countless lives. Similarly, Sergeant John Jack Lacey, a combat engineer, risked his life to clear paths through the mines and barbed wire that littered the beach. Despite being exposed to constant fire, Lacey and his team worked tirelessly to create openings for infantry to advance. Medics also played a critical role during the assault on Omaha Beach, displaying immense bravery and selflessness as they treated wounded soldiers under fire. Men like Technician 5th Grade, T/5, Arnold Raymond barely paused to consider their own safety as they crawled through open terrain to reach the injured. They carried men to safety, applied tourniquets, and performed life-saving measures with little regard for the bullets and explosions around them. Their actions ensured that many soldiers who might otherwise have died on the beach were given a chance to survive. Naval support personnel also deserve recognition for their heroism on D-Day. Destroyers and cruisers moved dangerously close to the shore to provide fire support, targeting German bunkers and artillery positions. Crews aboard these ships faced return fire from German coastal batteries, but continued their bombardment, often at point-blank range. Their efforts helped suppress enemy positions and provided critical support to the troops on the ground. The soldiers who led the charge on Omaha Beach demonstrated not only physical courage, but also remarkable mental resilience. For many, the horrors of that day were almost too much to bear. They saw their friends and comrades killed in front of them, yet they kept moving forward. They pushed themselves beyond the limits of human endurance because they believed in the importance of their mission. They understood that the success of the invasion rested on their ability to break through the German defenses, no matter the cost. As the day wore on, the tide began to turn. Small groups of soldiers managed to make their way up the bluffs, clearing German positions one by one. The overwhelming firepower of the German defenders began to wane as American forces advanced and secured critical strongpoints. By the end of the day, the beachhead was established, and the men who had fought their way through hell had accomplished their mission. The cost, however, was staggering. Thousands of American soldiers were killed, wounded, or missing in action. For those who survived, the memory of Omaha Beach would remain with them for the rest of their lives. The men who attacked Omaha Beach on D-Day were ordinary people called upon to do extraordinary things. They were farm boys, factory workers, students, fathers, and brothers who answered the call to serve their country and fight for freedom. Their courage and determination turned the tide of the battle and paved the way for the liberation of Europe. The stories of their bravery serve as a powerful reminder of the sacrifices made in the pursuit of peace and justice. Today, their legacy endures. The soldiers of Omaha Beach are remembered not only for their heroism, but also for their humanity. They faced fear, chaos, and death, yet they refused to give up. Their actions on June 6, 1944, changed the course of history and ensured that the ideals of liberty and democracy would prevail. For generations to come, the men who attacked Omaha Beach will stand as a symbol of what can be achieved when ordinary people rise to meet extraordinary challenges. The challenges faced by the soldiers storming Omaha Beach on June 6, 1944, were beyond anything most of them had imagined. As the landing craft made their way through the rough, cold waters of the English Channel in the early hours of the morning, the men aboard were already confronting the physical and emotional toll of what lay ahead. Many were seasick from the violent rocking of their small boats. They were cold, wet, and weighed down by gear, which included rifles, ammunition, food rations, grenades, shovels, and more, often totaling over 70 pounds. This burden alone would make their fight for survival harder, but it was only the beginning of the ordeal they would face as they approached the blood-soaked sands of Omaha Beach. The beach was a brutal and unforgiving battlefield. The terrain itself worked against the American forces. The long stretch of open sand offered no natural cover, exposing soldiers to relentless machine gun fire and mortar explosions as soon as they stepped off the landing craft. Beyond the flat shoreline, steep bluffs loomed high, giving the German defenders a commanding vantage point from which to rain death on the invading troops. These cliffs were dotted with well-fortified bunkers, pillboxes, and artillery emplacements that had been carefully constructed as part of the Germans' Atlantic Wall. The defensive preparations were so extensive that the Germans believed no invading force could ever breach them. The approach to the beach was treacherous. As the landing craft drew closer, many were struck by artillery shells or became tangled in underwater obstacles. These obstacles included wooden stakes, steeled hedgehogs, and mines, all designed to destroy the boats before they reached shore. The soldiers who managed to escape their landing craft had to wade through waist-deep or even neck-deep water while being targeted by enemy fire. Some men were pulled under by the weight of their gear and drowned before ever setting foot on the sand. Others were hit as they jumped into the water, their bodies floating lifelessly in the waves as their comrades pressed on. For those who made it to the beach, the nightmare only intensified. Machine guns, primarily MG-42s, fired at a rate of over 1,200 rounds per minute, cutting down soldiers in seconds. Mortar shells and artillery explosions created massive craters in the sand, flinging shrapnel and body parts through the air. The soldiers' only chance of survival was to find whatever cover they could, which was often limited to small depressions in the sand, discarded equipment, or the bodies of fallen comrades. Some troops froze in place, paralyzed by the sheer terror of what they were experiencing, while others desperately tried to move forward, crawling on their bellies to avoid the deadly fire. The beach itself was littered with obstacles. Barbed wire was strung across the sand, creating impenetrable barriers that trapped soldiers in the open and left them vulnerable to enemy fire. Mines were hidden throughout the area, and many soldiers lost their lives or limbs when they triggered these deadly devices. Combat engineers, tasked with clearing these obstacles under fire, showed extraordinary bravery as they worked to blow holes in the wire and create pathways for the infantry. These men carried explosives and demolition equipment, making them prime targets for German gunners who sought to stop any progress toward the bluffs. The chaos on Omaha Beach was compounded by disorganization. Many units landed far from their intended locations due to strong currents and navigation errors. The carefully laid plans for coordinated attacks fell apart almost immediately. Leaders were killed or wounded in the opening moments of the assault, leaving young, inexperienced soldiers to make decisions on the fly. Radios and communication lines failed, preventing coordination between different units and leaving individual groups of soldiers isolated. The lack of communication made it nearly impossible to call for artillery or naval support, forcing the men on the ground to rely solely on their own courage and determination to push forward. The soldiers faced not only the physical challenge of advancing up the beach, but also the psychological strain of witnessing unimaginable horrors. Friends and comrades were killed right next to them, their bodies torn apart by bullets or explosions. The screams of the wounded filled the air, mingling with the deafening roar of gunfire and artillery. Medics worked tirelessly to save as many lives as they could, often risking their own lives to reach the wounded under fire. Some soldiers, in their shock and desperation, clung to the sand, unable to move. Others kept pushing forward, driven by sheer determination or the need to escape the carnage behind them. Despite the overwhelming odds, small groups of soldiers began to find ways to advance. Officers and non-commissioned officers rallied their men, urging them to push forward and assault the German positions. In many cases, these leaders led from the front, inspiring their troops with their own bravery. Soldiers crawled through the sand, using shell holes and debris for cover as they slowly inched their way toward the bluffs. Some men managed to destroy German machine gun nests and bunkers using grenades, flamethrowers, and satchel charges. These individual acts of heroism were critical in weakening the German defenses and allowing the Americans to gain a foothold. The climb up the bluffs was one of the most physically demanding and dangerous parts of the assault. Soldiers had to scale the steep, muddy slopes while under fire, pulling themselves up with ropes, ladders, or simply their hands and feet. German defenders continued to fire down on them, but the relentless determination of the American troops began to pay off. Once the soldiers reached the top of the bluffs, they engaged the German defenders in brutal close-quarters combat, clearing bunkers and trenches one by one. The Germans, who had initially believed their defenses were impenetrable, began to falter as the Americans closed in on their positions. Naval support also played a crucial role in overcoming the challenges at Omaha Beach. Seeing the dire situation on the shore, American destroyers moved dangerously close to the beach, firing their guns at German bunkers and artillery positions. These ships provided critical fire support, suppressing enemy fire and giving the soldiers on the ground a chance to regroup and advance. Without this naval assistance, the assault on Omaha Beach might have ended in complete disaster. By the end of the day, the American forces had secured a tenuous hold on Omaha Beach, but the cost was staggering. Over 2,400 men were killed, wounded, or missing in action. The beach was littered with the dead and dying, a grim reminder of the price paid for victory. For those who survived, the memories of that day would haunt them for the rest of their lives. They had faced unthinkable challenges, relentless gunfire, deadly obstacles, disorganization, and the horrors of war, and had emerged victorious through sheer grit, bravery, and sacrifice. The success at Omaha Beach was a testament to the resilience and determination of the American soldiers who fought there. They overcame obstacles that seemed insurmountable, pushing forward in the face of death and destruction. Their actions on June 6, 1944, helped ensure the success of the D-Day invasion, which ultimately led to the liberation of France and the defeat of Nazi Germany. The challenges they faced and the sacrifices they made serve as a powerful reminder of the courage and resolve required to fight for freedom in the darkest of times. The legacy of the men who fought on Omaha Beach during D-Day stands as one of the most powerful testaments to courage, sacrifice, and determination in modern history. On June 6, 1944, these soldiers, ordinary men placed in extraordinary circumstances, achieved what seemed impossible. Their heroism during the assault not only changed the course of World War II, but also left a lasting impact on generations to come. For the men who survived that harrowing day, the memories of what they witnessed, experienced, and lost would remain etched into their minds forever. Their actions have become an enduring symbol of the fight for freedom, justice, and humanity during one of history's darkest chapters. When the D-Day invasion was planned, no one could have fully predicted the sheer intensity of what would unfold on Omaha Beach. Allied strategists understood the importance of capturing this vital piece of land to secure the success of Operation Overlord. Omaha Beach was the link between the British landing zones to the east and the American landing zones to the west. Without it, the invasion could have faltered, giving Germany time to regroup and crush the assault. The soldiers tasked with taking Omaha Beach knew the importance of their mission, but nothing could prepare them for the brutal reality they would face. Despite the overwhelming obstacles, their success that day proved to be a turning point, one that paved the way for the eventual liberation of Europe. The legacy of Omaha Beach cannot be separated from the sacrifices made by the soldiers who gave everything. Over 2,400 men lost their lives, were wounded, or went missing on that single day. For those who survived, their lives were forever changed. Many carried physical wounds from the battle, bullet wounds, shrapnel injuries, or amputations that would serve as permanent reminders of what they endured. Others bore emotional and psychological scars that haunted them for years to come. Nightmares, flashbacks, and survivor's guilt plagued many veterans, who struggled to reconcile the horrors they had witnessed. Yet, despite the suffering, most of these men carried their experiences with quiet dignity, often choosing not to speak of the horrors they endured. They viewed what they had done as a duty rather than an act of heroism, and they believed the true heroes were the ones who never returned. For those who died on Omaha Beach, their sacrifice was not in vain. The men who fell that day helped secure one of the most critical victories of the war, ensuring that the tide would turn in favor of the Allies. The cost was immense, but their courage and determination ultimately made victory possible. Today, the Normandy American Cemetery and Memorial stands as a powerful tribute to those who made the ultimate sacrifice. located on a bluff overlooking Omaha Beach. The cemetery contains the graves of over 9,300 American soldiers, most of whom lost their lives during the D-Day invasion and subsequent operations in Normandy. Rows of white crosses and stars of David stretch across the peaceful landscape, a stark contrast to the chaos and bloodshed that once occurred there. The cemetery serves as a place of reflection, gratitude, and remembrance, where visitors from around the world come to honor the fallen. The legacy of Omaha Beach also endures through the stories of the soldiers who fought there. Over the years, veterans have shared their first-hand accounts of the assault, allowing future generations to understand the sacrifices made that day. These stories, often recounted with great emotion, bring the events of D-Day to life. They remind us that behind every statistic is a human story, a young man with dreams, hopes, and a life left behind. These stories have been preserved in books, documentaries, and interviews, ensuring that the bravery of those who fought on Omaha Beach will never be forgotten. One of the most powerful aspects of the Omaha Beach legacy is its ability to inspire. The courage displayed by the soldiers who fought there has become a timeless symbol of perseverance in the face of overwhelming odds. Their actions remind us of what can be achieved through unity, determination, and sacrifice. This inspiration is not limited to military endeavors. It transcends generations, encouraging individuals to face challenges in their own lives with the same spirit of resilience. The men of Omaha Beach demonstrated that even in the darkest moments, hope and courage can prevail. The impact of their sacrifice extended far beyond the shores of Normandy. The success of D-Day marked the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany. The foothold secured by the Allied forces allowed for the liberation of France and, ultimately, the defeat of Adolf Hitler's regime. The men who fought on Omaha Beach were instrumental in restoring freedom to millions of people who had suffered under tyranny. Their actions contributed to shaping the world as we know it today, a world where liberty and democracy stand as enduring principles. The legacy of Omaha Beach also serves as a powerful reminder of the cost of war. The sheer scale of loss and suffering experienced that day highlights the devastating consequences of conflict. It reminds us of the importance of striving for peace and working to resolve differences without resorting to violence. The soldiers who fought on D-Day understood the stakes. They were willing to lay down their lives to protect future generations from the horrors of war. Their sacrifices compel us to honor their memory by working toward a better, more peaceful world. In the decades since D-Day, countless memorials and commemorative events have been held to honor the men who fought and died on Omaha Beach. Veterans have returned to Normandy to walk the sands where they once fought, often accompanied by their families. These visits are profoundly emotional, as the veterans reflect on what they endured and remember the friends they lost. For their families, these pilgrimages provide an opportunity to understand the sacrifices made by their loved ones and to ensure their stories are passed down to future generations. The connection between the living and the fallen remains strong, even decades after the battle. Each year, ceremonies are held at Omaha Beach and the Normandy American Cemetery to mark the anniversary of D-Day. Leaders, veterans, and citizens from around the world gather to pay tribute to the heroes of that day. These events serve as a solemn reminder of the price of freedom and the debt we owe to those who fought to secure it. The legacy of Omaha Beach is not confined to history books or memorials. It lives on in the values we uphold, the freedoms we enjoy, and the gratitude we feel toward those who sacrificed so much. The men who stormed Omaha Beach were ordinary people who performed extraordinary deeds. They came from farms, cities, and small towns across America, united by a common cause. They were young and afraid, but they found the courage to face unimaginable horrors because they believed in something greater than themselves. Their legacy is a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the power of courage, sacrifice, and determination to change the course of history. As time passes and the number of surviving veterans dwindles, it becomes even more important to preserve the memory of Omaha Beach. Future generations must understand the sacrifices made on that day and the significance of what was achieved. The stories of the men who fought and died there must continue to be told, not only to honor their memory, but to ensure that the lessons of history are never forgotten. The legacy of Omaha Beach reminds us that freedom is never free. It is earned through sacrifice, and it must be protected and cherished. The courage of the men who fought on Omaha Beach will forever stand as one of the most remarkable examples of heroism in the face of adversity. Their actions on June 6, 1944, changed the course of history. and their sacrifices ensured that future generations would live in freedom. The legacy of Omaha Beach endures as a symbol of hope, resilience, and the unwavering determination to fight for what is right. It is a legacy that will continue to inspire and remind us of the power of courage and unity, even in the darkest of times.